Coming up next on Public Access TV is Fan to Fan, the book game. Today's guest is local author and musician Steve Rollins to tell us about his new book, Unlikely Neighbors in Vermont. Stay tuned. You'll enjoy this peep into Vermont, and it could leave you entertained. Welcome to Fan, the book game. I'm your host, Dave Hornfischer. You were welcomed in with some lines from our guest album, David, the King and the Covenant. So today I'm pleased to welcome back a former board member of Access Framingham TV, musician and now author, Steve Rollins, to talk about his new book, Unlikely Neighbors in Vermont, as well as some of the related music and other songs. Steve, welcome. It's great to have you on Fan to Fan, and why don't we start by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how that led you to produce not only several albums, but now this interesting new book.
Thank you very much, Dave, and thank you for having me, because some of these stories that I want to tell you just are waiting to be told, and there are people that are going to appreciate being able to watch and see this show. So thank you. But I grew up in Vermont. That's the key to everything.
That's criteria number one, to write a book about Vermont.
And it was great because I grew up with fields and brooks through them and woods, and I could wander them with my dog, and it was idyllic, right? So it was wonderful, and a lot of stories come out of that. So, and that was the life growing up, and then of course, and later on in life, after I first got married before the family and the career kicked in, big time, I was able to write. I grew up with piano, and the organ was nearby, instruments in the house, music all around, and I was always writing stuff musically, and I was able, like I was saying, when I first got married to Debbie, get a little EP with 5 songs out before it all hit, right?
Yeah.
And then 35 years of career as a public service, the music was my outlet. That was the creative outlet, right? So you work, but you still get a chance to have a little fun. But I couldn't do much with it, right?
And now you've turned that fun into work.
Well, and then retirement hit.
Yeah, right.
And it was like an explosion. And I was pumping out all this music with the musicians and in the studios, and everything was. And usually you do an album and then you promote it, right? I didn't have time for promotion. I was on to the next album while the other one was still coming out, right? And so I kept going. And then I got to the 7th album, and I was working with this great producer, John Fannin, who used to live in Framingham. And he had his own group, New England. They had their big top 40 hit back in the day. And then we came out with this New Zealand song. The album is right behind me on the shelf there, that We Are One New Zealand. A big sound, just a big, beautiful, like the Lion King, right?
Yeah.
Big sound. And every song was great on it. And I was thinking, how can I top this? If this was the last album I did, I would be happy, right? It was that good. And meanwhile, I'd thrown a couple of stories up on Facebook, and people liked it. I mean, Dave, they really liked it. They were sending me notes. They really liked it. I'm going, they really like them, right? So I started writing more, and then pretty soon I'm going, this could be a book. And so that's how Unlikely Neighbors in Vermont came about. I never expected to be writing a book.
Vermont guy, lived in Vermont, had all these pieces that came together.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, let's put them together and make a book. I've read through it, and it's a very easy read, and it's a very quick read, and it's very entertaining. The characters make you like them.
Great.
Or you made me interested in the characters. I think that was the main thing. So then where do the ideas of the plot come from? The stories. You've got almost 30 little short stories, vignettes I might call them, I guess, and they kind of connect, but a little bit, but they're all. It's a weaving, I guess, in some ways.
It is, and well, when the holidays came, I was the kid running back and forth between the kitchen and the living room. I'd go to the kitchen, my mother and my aunt were talking, and they were telling these great stories, right? And then I'd go into the living room, and my father and my uncle were telling stories. They were great stories, right? But I find that when I was thinking about the book and how I wanted to craft all the stories together to make a book out of them, I found myself, I liked the kitchen stories better. because the way they told them, there were emotions, they had investment in the stories. I felt the characters. I felt how I felt the stories different. The way the women tell the stories is better.
Yeah.
The characters are more real, right?
Interesting.
And that's how I wanted my people to read my books and feel the stories and understand the characters.
So this is somewhat autobiographical then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to just tell the stories. I wanted them
we have a
to feel
picture
invested
of you
in them.
coming up as a kid when you were probably hearing some of these stories. I think this is you in the picture that we have.
Maybe so. But anyway, that's
Yeah.
how I wanted to craft the book.
Yeah.
And weave all the stories in. And
there you are. Is that
I'm the striped guy, and that's the dog No-No.
okay? Who shows up in the book?
Oh yes, big part of the book, and that's in front of our house we grew up in.
What town in Vermont was this?
This is Chester. Shout out to Chester. They'd be proud. Nice little community.
What, mid-state and upstate,
Well,
downstate?
it's about a third of the way up the state,
Okay.
near Springfield,
In the
Vermont.
country.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
On a farm?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was
Dairy cows?
It was
Chickens?
mostly a hay farm in my years. We'll get to the chickens, right?
Okay,
We
right.
had some animals, but we had a regular farm next to us. I learned a lot about farming next to us, and a few of the stories worked their way in.
Well, the title of the book leads you to wonder what happens when the unlikely neighbor shows up. I mean, one of the things, I haven't been to Vermont a lot in my life, but when I have, I'm always impressed. I jokingly said to you before, I seem to see more Yankee hats than Red Sox hats there at times. And so there seems like there's an invasion of New Yorkers into Vermont. Maybe not more, but enough to make a diehard Red Sox fan notice it. But so you bring this...
Never happened, Dave. You got everything all wrong. It's just all wrong, Dave.
Totally denial.
Well,
but anyway, you bring this this very interesting New York lady whose name is Velveeta into the story.
Well, she doesn't like to be called that. We got to get these things straight because she has strong opinions, if you didn't notice.
Did you know of Velveeta?
Well,
Or did you just like the cheese?
you got to have fun with these characters, right?
Right.
And Velveeta is from New York.
Right.
And going back through the history of Vermont, until 1968, there were more cows than people in Vermont. And then the New Yorkers came in. There were fewer cows, there were more New Yorkers. And Velveeta, V, came from New York. And she was a tough nut to crack because Lily, who's kind of the hero of our story, she's the salt of the earth. And she's kind, and she's got all the right quips and nuggets of wisdom and sayings for every situation until she meets V. And she thinks that every neighbor should be a friend. But V's a tough nut to crack. And V's got opinions, and she knows how to raise Lily's kids. And V doesn't have any kids. Oh, but it doesn't stop V from having opinions. But they kind of work it out a little bit as the coffee sessions go by.
Sometimes V is almost right.
And sometimes V, she's got a good business sense. She knows how to cut through issues, motions aside, and she helps out a lot.
But then Lily has to go back and talk to her husband.
Yeah, well, you got to do that. Yeah, and sometimes you just need a little breathing space to reflect. But,
Who himself was a fascinating character in the book. Huh?
yeah, well, what struck you about John?
Well, I was really surprised when you made him a selectman.
Well, wasn't he surprised too? I mean, all he did, he jumped in a truck. Some guy's riding around town in the parade, and he's got a sign on the thing that says next selectman, right? Of course, that means the guy driving the truck is running for selectman. And he sees John, who's a very popular guy. John, hop in with me. And everybody assumed after that point that John was the guy running for selectman, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, John was running for selectman, and he became selectman. Yeah, that's the way things happen in Vermont. You just never know.
Well, yeah, that was a fun lot
story
of the stuff
write.
was interesting, and I'm reading along, and it's all very happy. And then we come to this tragedy, and
yes.
that really, I guess every story or every book has to have something like that in it, and that really hit me as I was reading through. I was not expecting that.
Well, that's life, John, and that's the way it is. I mean, the story is the story you're referring to of the girl who fell through the ice in the river.
Right.
And that's a true story. That was the story of my aunt.
Really?
And she died that way. But there's a weaving of two stories here. And the the reference in the poem at the end where the Lily is starting to heal and just coming to grips with this terrible tragedy is a story about a girl in Vermont that I knew, and a wonderful family that grew up and adopted all these kids, and this was one of the kids, and her name was Tiffany. And I want to talk about her for just a minute. And she had 2 chambers in her heart. Now we have 4 chambers in our heart. That's normal. And she had 2 chambers, and they came to her and they said to this family, "Would you adopt her?" Short life, couple of weeks, couple of months. She wasn't expected to live very long, but she needed a home and love, and that was it. She lived 19 years, Dave. It's just incredible. And everybody that met her knew who she was because she was just one of those people.
Right.
And so when
you put the 2 together
I put the 2 together, and when she died and she had her service, I wrote this song for her, for her service. And it was just a moving moment for all of us to remember her.
We're going to play a little clip from the song in a minute, but before we do, the way this all worked out in the book is this family had a story session, and one of the children in the family wrote a poem, which I thought was really fit the situation. It really captured me when I read it. I thought maybe you'd share that with our audience.
Of course, yes. Yes, it was something that, well, I'll just read it. It was something very important to me to write well for Tiffany. And sleep will overtake you.
And there's a photo of Tiffany.
It'll sweep the darkness from your mind, and the touch that will awake you. It will be gentle, but not mine. Love never dies. Love never dies. And peace that won't forsake you will be yours for all time. Because time, it has no meaning. That's the gift of the divine. Love never dies. Love never dies. It lives beyond goodbyes. It lives beyond goodbyes.
That was so beautiful. Anybody that's had a loss in their life, I
Yes.
think, could really relate to that.
Yes.
And then we'll play a little clip from the piece of music that you wrote. I didn't realize that the music was actually written in relation to the true story here that happened.
Yes, we worked very hard on that, and I'm so pleased the way it came out. It's just wonderful. Thank you very much for asking about that.
Wow, well, welcome back after that. I'm not sure where we go. It's always tough to follow something like that. But why don't we move on now, as the book did from there. And I thought everybody, as we have to do in life, people do move on. And you had a couple other stories in there. I think one that really hit, I thought was a real cute Vermont story. What was a picture with the story of the car. And I think we have a picture of the car that inspired this.
Oh, my neighbor. This neighbor had this 1928 Ford. He got it in 1930. Of course, nothing's new in Vermont. Bought it in 1930. And he went up and down the road every day to work at the grain store. And he kept it going all these years. I mean, this is decades, right? And his actual name was Henry. His father lived there. His name was Harvey. He was Henry, and his son was Henry. And I had to change the name for the book, so I named him Harvey, which is kind of cute because his father's name was Harvey. And the interesting side piece, which I didn't write about, was how he got his parts. Was he would just go around and he would find old Fords, and he'd have them hauled up to his place. His backyard was full of old Fords. He'd go out back and find a part and bring it in and fix his vehicle. And up and down the road he'd go all the time, and we'd see him and wave to him. And in that picture, he's actually sitting in that vehicle. it was just a part of the landscape. Wave to them every day.
That's pretty much the way the Cubans are keeping alive all these 58 cars that they have down there now. I guess they're using Russian parts, but car parts.
Well, his cars were sitting there so long the trees started growing right through them.
Yeah, if that was an urban neighborhood, the neighbors would have loved that backyard, wouldn't they?
This is Vermont.
I knew you were going to say that. Well, that was a cute story. Do you have another one that kind of hit you?
Well, one of my favorites is the chickens. I mean, I was talking about this recently with my sister, and she had a totally different take on it. She felt still a little guilty about it. I said, "You kidding me? You were a hero." I mean, these were the meanest, nastiest chickens on earth you could ever imagine. And during the winter, we had them locked up in the horse part of the barn because they had to be somewhere, right? And we'd have to go out and feed them, Dave. And it was the most horrifying experience. We were little kids. We were carrying these pans of food, and they knew we were coming, you know, and they attacked us. They attacked us. We had this planned thing. We'd open the door. One would open the door, and the other would rush in and throw the food, and we'd run out the door as fast as we could. They were mean, and they would actually jump at us and pick us. Well, it was terrible. One morning, we went out and fed them, and the next morning we came back, all was quiet. Not a peep out of them, literally. They were all dead. It was the best day of our lives. That was dead. Those terrible birds. And even our mother was kind of happy they were gone because they were not normal birds. And she finally figured out that she'd gotten rid of some dough. We had us feed it because instead of flour, she'd put salt or something like that instead of sugar. And she's kind of thinking maybe that salt had killed all those birds.
Oh, no.
I think that's what happened. Oh, that was a wonderful day. And in the book, you know, one of the sisters there, Ginny, is proclaiming her hero. Oh, that was a great day.
True stories do make great novels, don't they?
Oh, I'm telling. Well, if I can throw in another story, because you were talking about whether they're fact or fiction, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of these stories, but some of them are fiction, right?
Good.
And so I was asking my adult kids, I mean, you know, what's a fiction story in there? Come on, tell me. Guess. And so my son, Nathan, guess. He says, well, the one about the fox in the kitchen, that's not real, right, Dad? Oh, man, the biggest smile comes across my face because it was true.
Really?
It was true.
Oh, no.
Coming home one night, I know the curve. My father went around the curve. Fox ran across the road. He hit it with the tire, knocked him dead. I mean, beautiful little fox.
So what do you do?
So he grabbed it by the tail, threw it in the back of the truck. He came home. He thought he'd be just wise guy, right? He picked it by the tail, threw it, and landed it right in the middle of the kitchen. Well, my mother went nuts. She went berserk, and she was screaming. He couldn't get it out. Well, that was the dumbest thing he ever did, right? It was just a disaster. But my son thought that could not be real. Real is better than fiction sometimes. So I, of course, tried to make a good story out of it, but it was just too good to let go.
Poor John, the father, he even made a mess of the wife's favorite cutting board, which...
Well, Dave and viewers, do not cut on the side some craftsman painted the picture on. Turn it over. Cut on the plain side. Do not put that knife through that picture.
The reality of these stories was just, it just kept me reading. I'll have to tell you that.
It's just so simple, right?
But I guess one of the, you know, the title of the book is The Unlikely Neighbors. Let's just touch for about another minute on the relationship between Lily and V. Was there somebody like that in your life that?
Yes.
Yeah.
V is a real person.
Oh, really? From New York?
V is a composite person.
Okay.
V moved in next door to us, and she actually was a wonderful young lady. And she got married and bought the Chester Inn.
Oh, really? Oh.
And transformed it just like the story says. But everyone's got a relative, an older aunt or something like that. And I took a couple of people that have a sharp tongue. And they would say, don't touch that, you'll break it. You get that, right?
Yeah.
And I took that tone of voice and I threw that into the personality.
Okay.
And that's how we got V. That's how we got V. So she's a real person.
Well, this is just a wonderful collection of pieces that you put together. But after you get all these ideas together, something in you said, I want to make a book, right? You touched on that in the beginning a little bit.
Yeah, and then I realized I was halfway there and I better keep going.
And so how does it end up being printed? How do you get from ideas, stories in your head, maybe a pen and pencil even? Oh, do you write your things out or do you type them? I had an author
I
on
type
the
them
other
in
day
Word.
who wrote everything and then read it, but
No, I
yeah.
type them in Word.
Okay, yeah, okay.
I get up in the morning and I type away. It just
Uh-huh.
comes easily, and then I do the third draft and the fourth draft, and then once it's clean, and then I go back and I say, oh, I'd like to tie this back to this other story, and then I think I can tie it in the next story. And then I always like to put a twist on the end of the
Okay,
thing,
right.
or,
I can feel
or
that.
sucker you into the
Yes.
next chapter, so
yes.
you want to keep going and not put it down, and turn out the light.
And then when you got most of these done, you shared this with some friends, local and family, and
well, you have to have proofreaders,
yeah, okay.
and
To find more than the typos.
they try not to have opinions, but you get a few of those too. But
It's a good thing you didn't ask me. Yeah.
But you have to share it with people because there's always some correction, right? And I challenged my Facebook readers and my relatives, and it made it a better book. Made it a better book, and I appreciate that. But I'm not sure where the first idea came to print somewhere or something. I looked it up online or something, but it really was really obvious right off that the best way to self-publish and print was. Shall I go into this?
Sure, please. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we like to focus on this show, is because lots of people have ideas, but not too many of them make this happen. And so,
Well,
how did
let me
Steve
tell you,
do that?
it's not that hard, and it's free.
Mm-hmm.
But you do have to pay attention, and you have to follow instructions. Amazon. How do I publish? You go to Amazon. They've combined with Kindle. It's called KDP. That's Kindle. And Amazon together, and they give you real specific instructions, and you can use Word. You can use that Word document, and like, for example, you don't put a carriage return between your paragraphs. You keep them closed. Kindle takes care of that.
Okay.
They put the space in there. They want 3 spaces. They don't want 5.
Probably all AI
Spaces.
these days.
It's all laid out, and you follow the directions because you don't want to mess up, right? And if you do that, if you really follow their directions, you can do it, and it'll all come out right. And I never planned on printing. I just wanted to do an ebook because I knew that was the simplest, easiest, cheapest way for people to get the book.
Right.
And so I did all that stuff, and I put a lot of pictures in because I knew the story and I had things to go with it.
So these were all an ebook when you first did it.
Yes.
This one was, yes.
And then I bumped into some readers.
Okay.
And
they said, "Why not?
I
Don't
want
read
to read
electronic stuff. I want it in hand." That's me. I loved holding it. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then I found the only mistake that I made happened when you export your ebook into printing, and the pictures come with it, and that upped the price. And so they suggest a price for it, and that book went from like $3 to $9.99.
Just the cost to print it.
Because of the pictures.
Right.
I could have had this book for $5 or $6,
Okay.
but the pictures made the difference.
Uh-huh.
And I consider that a mistake because I really wanted that to be a cheaper,
Right.
less expensive, never use the word cheap, of course,
Yeah.
less expensive book. But that's the way it turned out. And so otherwise, you can do it all by yourself and it doesn't cost anything.
No.
Now, I make about 36 cents on that book. I mean,
Yeah.
so I don't make the money. I don't know where that all goes. But it's out there. It's done. It's printed.
It's on Amazon
On the
to sell.
ebook, you can get that book for like $3.
Okay.
That's a much better
Right.
deal. I suggest people do that.
Uh-huh. Sure.
And then I make $1 or something.
Uh-huh.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, well, I've talked to people who don't make anything when they come out in print, so they lose money
Yeah,
on each
well,
one.
there you go. But
Yeah,
36
just-
cents
yeah,
will pay the
no.
taxes on it. So
Yeah, well,
you got to do that
You get a
too.
tax write-off, maybe.
But what you do, you really need to do this though, is set up a separate email address, set up a separate bank
Right.
account, have the money sent separately. So for when it comes to tax time,
It's all taken care
it's
of.
all, you get it all figured
You
out.
even had a printer in Texas, right?
Well, you can order as an author, your own books.
Yeah.
The first set came from Texas,
Okay.
and I ordered another group of 10, and they came from South Carolina. So Amazon figures out what the best deal is for them.
So you haven't printed hundreds of these yet?
Oh, no. I never want to go into that type of optimism. You just wait and see. I mean, the most important thing people can do for me is to put opinions, comments.
On Amazon?
Yeah, they get the 5-star
right.
rating.
Uh-huh.
Always put 5 stars, by the way.
Sure.
And then write your little comments. And those are the things that captures
Well, I
people's
will do
mind.
that for you because I did enjoy this. So
Oh.
thanks for reminding me of the need to do that. I
Thank you
understand
very
that. I
much.
understand the importance of that.
Yeah. Great.
So you if you want to buy the book, you can find it on Amazon, and
It's-
you can read it. You can get an audio version, or you can even get a print one from Amazon.
A print one, ebook. It's at Blair Books. It's in Chester, Vermont, right beside the Chester Inn.
Oh, okay. So
Blair Books has got it.
I would think the Chester Inn might even want to sell a few.
Well, they don't do that. So
No, they don't. They wouldn't put a couple on
they
the
should.
counter. Yeah,
They should. It's got
Yeah,
a little of their
I know.
history in it.
yeah.
And you can order it from me. It's Dave has agreed to put it online at my email address,
Okay.
StephenSRollinsBooks@gmail.com.
Okay.
And you can get it right from me. And that works out great. So that's 3 ways to go.
Stephen S. Rollins at
Books.
Stephen S. Rollins Books at gmail.com. I always like to repeat this about 10 times because I know if I'm watching, I hear the end of it. So
Yeah.
it's Stephen S. Rollins Books at gmail.com. I got it.
It's just my name.
Yeah, there you
Yeah,
go.
don't put
Well,
books on the
Okay,
end.
right.
You got to put the middle initial in
Okay.
too.
So we're kind of running down to the end of our half hour. The time always goes by when I'm having one of these great discussions. What's next? Did you mention before or just now that you may have another one in the works? I bet you got a lot more stories.
Well, Carol Locke, who was so wonderful in encouraging me to get, recently confessed to me, she said, I knew you wouldn't write just one. Because I knew I was only going to write one. But did you know Paul Newman came to Chester, Vermont once?
I would never have guessed that.
Well, the reason you don't know it because it's not in the first book. But it's in the second book.
Oh, I was thought you were going to say it's because it wasn't true.
No, he did. He came to Vermont and he didn't want to sign his slip for the credit card purchase to make his purchase because, it was autographed to him. And so Mr. Fred DeRozier, who ran the shop, said, you don't sign, you don't get it. Just real
put an
Vermont
X.
characters. So that's in the next book.
Okay.
We're working on it.
So you started the next book.
I did. And I had more stories to tell, but this one's different because the whole book is an arc of stories, but it actually is a story into itself. So it's stories within stories, but it actually has a beginning and an ending. And I won't give the ending away because that is part of the whole thing.
And it's going to have a Vermont title again.
I think the working title right now is Back to Vermont.
Back to Vermont, which is on your. You got these other. We didn't talk much about your albums. We got about 20 seconds here, but it says Back to Vermont on this one.
Yeah,
that
that's the
image,
subtitle on
and,
that one.
And
That was my
almost
pandemic
in
album.
Vermont, yeah. So those all could be great titles. Well, anyway, Steve, our clock has come to an end. I thank you so much for
Well, I
doing what
thank
you're
you
doing.
so
First of
much.
all, for sharing these bits about Vermont. If anybody doesn't want to read this book after listening to this discussion, I'd be surprised. So thank you so much.
Thank you so
You've been
much,
a great guest. Thanks for all of what you did for AFTV back when the two of us were rookie board members here. So
Yeah, we did what we could to cause trouble.
we
didn't
did. We helped get this new studio together back
Yep,
in the day.
yep, we
So,
did
and
our
all
part.
you folks out there in Framingham TV land or watching this on YouTube, buy Steve's books. Check out his records online here. And if you're in Framingham, come back and watch us on Monday, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Friday nights at 8:30 p.m. And we're also on, if you get up early, on Saturdays at 7:30. We love to talk books. I'm a fan of sports, but I'm also a fan of books. So good night, good morning, whenever. Thanks for watching.